I grabbed the delivery backpack in my hand and quickly rushed over to the counter to pick up the order. We had received it right before we were about to close the restaurant, so I guess you could say that I wasn't too thrilled about having to do a delivery just as I was about to get off work. The truth is, we wouldn't have accepted it if it hadn't been for that unusually high total. There was actually quite a bit of stuff in there. There was pizzas, sandwiches, drinks, and, well, there was more pizza. It seemed like whoever had ordered it must have been some sort of a party or something. So I guess the manager couldn't ignore the amount. I was just annoyed that I was the one getting the short end of the stick, and I had to deliver it. But regardless, the order was prepared, and so here I was, standing near my car, gloomily just staring at the screen, trying to figure out where the location of this unusually high-priced order was. And then I was met with yet another annoyance. When the screen showed that the delivery address, it was somewhere in the outskirts of the town, far away from the usual neighborhoods that we delivered to. Naturally, it was frustrating, but I figured that I was gonna have to do it anyways, so it was really no use getting worked up. So I just reluctantly loaded the pizzas into my car, and then I headed out to my pizza adventure, completely oblivious to what awaited me. The drive itself was surprisingly quick though, despite being almost 30 minutes. But then again, I was just trying to get this over and done with, so I'm sure that helped. Further into the drive, it got pretty dark and quiet. Well, it was almost midnight after all, so of course it was dark, but I'm actually talking about the surroundings. They just kept getting stranger by the minute, because the further I drove, the fewer houses and lights I saw. At times it almost felt like I was driving through a ghost town, surrounded by nothing but trees and patches of empty woods. Don't tell me I'm driving to a haunted cabin in the middle of the woods. I chuckled under my breath. I guess that was just my way of masking the anxiety with a joke. And it would turn out that it in fact wasn't actually a cabin in the woods after all. Instead, I drove up a long private road that led to a massive iron gate right in front of me. And as I exited my car, dumbfounded as I could be, there it was, a massive mansion standing before me, just beyond the iron gates. The sheer scale of that place was suffocating to say the least. Razor-sharp iron pipes, and the towering brick walls, and the huge stone pillars. I would say it looked less like a home and more like a high-security palace built to keep the rest of the world out. It was easily the biggest house I had ever seen. But as awestruck as I was, I certainly wasn't there to admire its beauty. I had one job, and I definitely wasn't going to wait around and delay it any more than I should. So I grabbed the pizzas from my car and walked through the iron gates, slowly making my way toward this gigantic mansion in front of me. I remember thinking how whoever owned this place must be loaded with some serious cash. I mean, who else could casually afford something like this? It was practically a palace. I walked up to the front steps of this modern-day palace and rang the doorbell that was positioned just beside the front door. As I was standing there, waiting on the front porch, it suddenly hit me how quiet and borderline silent everything was. The porch lights were on, and the gates were open as I walked through them, but every other part of the property just seemed oddly silent. It was incredibly dark for the most part, and there wasn't a single person around. But then again, I wasn't exactly an expert on mansions. It wasn't like I knew how they were supposed to look or feel like. this was basically my first time visiting one, so I didn't really have a frame of reference. But still, the unusual darkness and the sheer isolation, it did struck me as odd nonetheless. And then, just a few seconds later, I heard slow footsteps slowly approaching the front entrance from somewhere inside the mansion. The front door slowly opened, and standing in the doorway, there was an elderly man. The old man looked pale and kind of exhausted. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at me. But then he finally spoke. "Pizza?" I nodded and I told him yes, that it was a delivery, and then I gave him the total amount. "I'm really sorry, I must have forgotten my wallet in my office. Come on in. You can wait inside while I grab the wallet. It'll only take a minute." Normally I would have hesitated going inside, because honestly, stepping inside a stranger's house you just met is kind of a recipe for disaster. I know you shouldn't be paranoid, but you should also not be stupid. Which is basically what I was when I actually decided to walk in there. I honestly don't know why. I can't really explain it. Maybe it was because of the way that he spoke, or maybe I had some deep hidden respect for the elderly. I don't know why I did it, but all I know is, in that moment, he seemed harmless enough, so I just decided to step inside with him. The first thing I noticed was its sheer size. The entrance hall was enormous to say the least. It looked something straight out of a Victorian movie, with all the paintings and all the vintage looking furniture. The second thing I noticed was the lighting, or rather I should say, the lack of it. It was almost non-existent. The place was really dark, with only the light from outside barely illuminating the hall. I know it was nighttime, and most people don't keep every light in their house turned on while they were getting ready for bed. But still, for such a gigantic mansion, the darkness was really bizarre. The old man quietly apologized to me once again. Then he turned around and disappeared down a dark hallway. I waited for a while. The entrance hall was actually well designed. The interior looked well decorated and everything looked expensive. But again, as good as the mansion looked, the emptiness, the darkness, and just the sheer isolation, it really stood out. I don't know what it was about this house. Structurally, it seemed like a nice place, but the feeling I got from it and the aura that it exuded, something felt off. As I stood there, waiting, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw something move. I quickly turned around and looked toward the staircase, but there was nothing. I could have sworn that I saw something, but it was already extremely late, so I figured that I was just tired and probably seeing some things now. But, as if to dismiss that thought, only a few moments later, I started hearing something. It was faint, but I could barely make out what it was. I heard what sounded like slow footsteps somewhere upstairs, like someone was quietly walking around or something. I stood there, quietly listening for a few seconds, until the footsteps slowly faded away in silence. But then I jerked my head toward the left, deep into the mansion. Maybe it was a shadow, or I guess a reflection or something, I thought to myself. I was almost sure that there was movement though. I looked toward the dark hallway where the old man had disappeared. Nothing. It was just as quiet as the rest of the mansion, The old man still hadn't come back, and several minutes had already passed. By this point, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I was really feeling uncomfortable. Every now and then, I could have sworn that I saw shadows moving somewhere deeper inside the mansion. Whenever I looked directly toward them, there was really nothing, but I knew something was off about this place, and I just wanted to leave as quickly as possible. But in that moment, I heard something that froze me in my place. It was a faint clicking sound that came from somewhere around me. It was kind of like the sound that a door makes when it's opened or closed. For a second, I didn't process it. But then, a cold chill ran down my spine as the realization finally hit me. Without thinking, I ran straight toward the front door. I was desperately hoping that I was wrong and that it was just my imagination. I reached for the front door handle and slowly twisted it. And my worst fear came true. The handle didn't move. The front door had been locked from outside. I immediately started sweating profusely, and my heart felt like it was about to beat out of my chest, as I realized that I had walked into a trap and it was entirely my own carelessness. I desperately tried turning the lock, pulling the handle, looking for any way to force the door open, but it just wouldn't budge. The door was simply too strong and sturdy. As I frantically attempted to break the door, I started hearing something again. It was loud and deep, coming from upstairs. It was the footsteps again, but only this time, it wasn't just one pair. There were several heavy footsteps echoing from different parts of the mansion, slowly getting closer to me. Every instinct in my body told me one thing: run. Because I knew that this was a really bad situation, and if I didn't make a run for it now, I probably wouldn't be able to. So I turned away from the front door, and then I sprinted deeper into the mansion, desperately searching for another exit. I rushed through one room after another, scanning every possible direction, hoping to find a way out. I ran to a dining room, a library, a hallway lined with closed doors. But there didn't seem to be any other way out. Behind me, I could hear voices and sounds of people running around. They were looking for me. Don't let him get away. Find him. I heard every possible thing that you just did not want to hear in this situation. As the seconds ticked by, I really started panicking. I started breathing heavy, losing hope with every dead end that I hit. I genuinely thought that this was it for me. But then, I nearly slipped on the polished wooden floor. I spotted a door near the very back of the house. I grabbed the handle and twisted it, and the door flew open as I felt the cold night air rush inside. I was so beyond relieved that I could probably cry at that point. I didn't hesitate for a second. I burst through the side door into the dimly lit backyard, and then I started running away from the building. Behind me, I heard the side door slam open. Those people had realized that I had escaped. I heard multiple people chasing after me through the darkness. But I didn't care. I sprinted across the massive estate, jumped over a small fence, pushing through the thick bushes, and then I finally reached the driveway that led me into this mess. My lungs were practically on fire at this point, and I was shaking uncontrollably. My car was still sitting exactly where I had left it. Thank goodness that they didn't mess with it. I'm guessing that they thought that it wouldn't be needed since I wouldn't be escaping anyway. which itself is beyond terrifying to think about. I threw myself into the car and started the engine as fast as I could. The tires screeched across the pavement as I sped down the long private road without looking back. I didn't stop driving, not for a single second. I was too damn scared to stop. I thought about abandoning everything and just going home. And initially, that's where I was headed. But I took a turn. Just south of my home was a city police station. I don't know what those people were going to do to me in that mansion. I had just escaped a situation where I probably shouldn't have made it. For all intents and purposes, I was scared out of my soul. I wasn't thinking straight. What if those people knew where I lived? What if they come chasing me all the way back to my house? I had about 1,000 nightmare scenarios rushing through my mind. I was just too scared to go home. So I went to the police station and explained everything to them. The police ended up going to that mansion right as I finished giving my statement. I thought it would help me calm down, but I guess it made the situation look even worse. Because when the police came back after searching it, I was met with an explanation that scared me more than anything. The police had spent hours searching the entire mansion. They found no one there. Whoever had been there had already disappeared. But they did find enough evidence to confirm that people had recently been using that property. There were food supplies, sleeping bags, and other belongings scattered throughout the mansion, suggesting that multiple people had been living there for quite some time. But the strangest discovery was hidden beneath the mansion. The officers discovered a hidden room deep into the basement of the mansion, containing several strange objects, arranged in a way which they described as ritualistic. There were candles and unusual symbols painted on the walls of the basement, along with several other items that the police just refused to describe in detail. They couldn't tell me exactly what that basement had been used for, but they said that it was disturbing enough to be documented as evidence. Despite searching the entire mansion and the surrounding woods for hours, they never found the old man or anyone else that I had heard inside that house. It was as if that they had vanished. And that was basically all I got from the police. The investigation continued for several weeks, but eventually the updates stopped. No arrests were made and no suspects were identified. So whoever those people were, they were never found. I still think about that night more often than I'd like to admit. I've never been able to fully explain what was going on in that house. But I think that it goes without saying that those people were not normal. I don't know what they wanted with me, or why they would lure me into that mansion. I don't know, and honestly, I don't wanna know. All I know is that I was lucky enough to make it out safely, because I have a feeling that not everyone who walked through that front door did.